If you own a business, you need to hear this. The monetary reset is already underway. It's not coming, it is happening. And businesses who understand this shift are going to survive it, and those who ignore it will get blindsided. So, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's unfolding and how to prepare. But before we do, welcome to my channel. I am Jice Johnson, business strategist and economic developer, and I'm so glad to have you with me. It has been quite some time since I've been on YouTube, but I'm back. Give me a second to get things up and running, but I appreciate everyone's patience. I had a couple of folks in my DMs that were like, I went to the channel and there was nothing there. And I'm like, yes, it's coming. It's coming, guys. I do work for a living. I actually run business and I actually run economic development. So, but I appreciate y'all's patience. Listen, on this channel, I'm going to be breaking down the intersection of business, leadership, and global affairs. So that you can stay informed, so that you can build strategically, and so you can operate with intention in this very shifting world that we're experiencing right now. So if you're a business owner, if you're a leader, if you're trying to understand what is happening right now, you are in the right place. In this first episode of me re-emerging here in these YouTube streets, I want to talk about what the monetary reset actually means. And I want to try to, not make this into a dramatic thing. I really just want this to be informative. And one of the things that was pointed out to me very recently was a lot of times we're talking about economic concepts, right? And we don't really truly understand what some of those economic concepts actually mean. I want to try to break them down. I hope that I'm not too boring when I do it, because I can definitely be a lecturer. I was in a past life. So I want to try to talk through some of these though, because I think it's important that we understand and that there's been a significant dumbing down of our society, which is why we don't understand some of the basic concepts that are actually governing our life. So this is important to me. Feel free to skip through if I'm, boring you, but I think that it's important and that's what I'm going to talk about here. So I want to talk about this in a way that's not really dramatic. A monetary reset. This is not going to be an overnight collapse. And I say that because the US dollar at the moment is too powerful to be an overnight collapse, but there have been previous monetary resets and collapses in other countries that have happened overnight. So it's not impossible. I do believe that right now what we are seeing is some very concerted efforts to soften the blow. It doesn't mean that something can't change and that there won't be like a harder reset. So we should be preparing. And to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed in myself, right? Like, I think now that I'm looking at the signs, I'm like, you should have seen this a while ago, but I didn't. So then when I saw, I was like, oh my God, we got to be talking about this because we're not talking about it in our communities. And if the only way that we're talking about the economy is based off of what's happening in the stock market, we're thinking about it wrong, especially because this is not the same as like a depression or just these up and downs that we generally tend to see in market cycles. What we are seeing is an artificial inflation and a propping up of an economy because they keep changing the rules and not because the math actually maths. And so now the math is unsustainable, right? And that's kind of where we are. And it's not the first time that it's happened. It's not just an American thing, but because of where we are right now today and the way that the US is positioned, this is a global affair. So it's important that we just understand like what's happening here in the US, how it affects us, in particular, how it affects us as leaders and business owners, but then also like what's happening in the world. So, there's a series of structural changes that are already in motion, and what they're driven by is first unsustainable debt. So we have sky high interest payments, right? And so what this means is think about debt, right? Debt comes in principal, it comes in interest. The interest, if you're not familiar with this, is called servicing the debt. So it is what it costs to have done that loan, essentially. That is your interest payment, right? That is what the lender gets for giving you something you didn't have. The interest payments on the US debt is getting ready to be the top line item in the US budget. So some of the things, and I just want to clear this up real quick because this isn't designed to be like an hour long talk, right? I want to clear something up. When we're talking about paying off the debt, like no one's paying off $38 trillion. That's not what's happening. That's not even a thought. The issue currently is not that the amount of debt is so high, it's how much it costs to service the debt. It's unsustainable. And so what that means is that you can't lend because you can't pay back. It's like when someone, if you were to get that loan, the principal and interest, like the interest is too high for you to ever be able to even sustain the payments of the debt. So that's what we're really seeing. And I want to make that clear because when I'm out here in these like Instagram and TikTok streets, I'm hearing things that I'm like, that's not right, guys. That's not what we're doing, right? So we're not paying off the debt. We can definitely pay it down, but you pay it down in order to maintain the interest payment on the debt. But we're at a place where we have unsustainable debt, okay? So when we have that, what we also have is a decline in investor confidence, again, which means people are not buying the debt. And also, because the debt is not backed by an asset, it's backed by the full faith of the US government. If you lose faith in the US government, then what is it backed by? So, again, part of the shifts that we're seeing is to try to strengthen the confidence so that folks don't just pull their money, right? Because it's not backed by anything. And so, what we're also seeing is that there's global shifts away from the US dollar. And so, what I would say is that there's some form of a goal right here to preserve the economic stability while redesigning the monetary system. And I personally, if you're new to following me, you're in for a treat. But if you have been following me, you will know I am not a fan of our government and the way that it operates. It is incredibly corrupt, and it saddens me to be an American at times, but it's incredibly corrupt. So there should be these concerted efforts to preserve the stability of the economy while we have to redesign a system because the system is not sustainable. Do I believe that that's what all of our leaders are doing? Absolutely not. There's no record of fiscally responsible leadership in our government. So there you have it. So we should remember again that monetary resets have happened before, right? And so what's important in that is that what we know for sure, based off of all historical aspects, is that the most vulnerable of us will really have our work cut out for us. And as a person who has spent the last decade of my life working towards Black economic mobility, I have found this really difficult. I can't lie. Like, I have looked at the signs and I have looked at the amount of time that I believe that we have to try to get our shit together, and I am not optimistic. I'm not. But I'm still here because I think it's important that we have the information. And I think those of us that are ready to mobilize and move need to be equipped with the right information to mobilize and move. So that's what it is. There is a cycle. We should understand this. It's a cycle of stability, instability, collapse, and a reset. We are in between the collapse and the reset. And when I say in between, we're really leaning a lot closer to the reset, but resets could take time, right? So I said these are like incremental things that are taking place. The collapse, I think how am I trying to word this? What we're seeing in terms of a collapse is the fact that like it's already happened. It's like it's a delayed effect, right? So like this is already here because it's for sure not sustainable, but we haven't experienced the full brevity of it just yet. It's so there's this delay. One of the things I think is important is like just like this isn't coming overnight, it doesn't mean that the reset or even the rebound or just like stabilization, like going from reset back to stability could take time. There are some economies that have been unstable for decades. So I think it's also important that we understand like this doesn't just look like a market cycle. This doesn't just look like, oh yeah, the market's gonna crash, but then it's gonna go back up and keep going up and keep going up and keep going up. It's and that's why it's unsustainable because that's not real. That's another topic for another day. Y'all let me bring it back. We are in that position or in that space between the collapse and the reset. And what I think is important to remember is that we don't know how long that collapse to reset is going to be. And we certainly don't know how long the reset back to stability is going to be. We don't know how long that's going to be. It could take years, it could take decades. Okay. So we should understand that. And this is not just an American issue. I'm going to keep saying that because we need to understand that there's like global implications here. But greed is what causes that instability, right? Like when you move from stability into that instability, it's because of greedy fuckers. That's why it's because of greedy folks. And greed is a human issue. It's not just an American issue. It's not even just a Western issue, but it is a human issue. And so, how you handle that greed is where I believe all these different theories about like which economic model is best actually comes from. Like, do we use communism? Do we use socialism? Do we use, capitalism or Marxism or whatever? These are coming from people trying to determine the best way to handle greed and try to control it enough, right? And that's really where you kind of get like entropy, right? It's like systems that move from order to disorder. That happens naturally unless you put a lot of energy into maintaining them. And so what we watch when we're creating these economies is what is the best way to maintain, right, some level of stability. But yeah, disorder creates opportunity for those that are willing to seize it. And so I believe that there are oftentimes folks that throw us into times of instability on purpose so that they can seize those opportunities. You see that evident in things like creating wars where none exist. And then inside of those wars, it creates these economies, and you see this emergence of, a new wealthy class, or these folks start rising up to the top, or a consolidation of wealth from those that are already wealthy. But they created the chaos and the instability that led to those opportunities for them to do that. So, all right, let me bring it back and let me just start breaking this down. So how do we get here, right? And I want to leave you with not just how we got here, but more importantly, from a business perspective, from a small business perspective, what are some of the things that we need to be doing? So I'm going to break it down real quick and then get into my tips on what we need to be doing as small businesses. So first, we have to understand how we got here. That's debt restructuring, or kind of let me not say how we got here, where we are today, where we are today. So one is the debt restructuring. The US debt is not manageable. I mentioned that already. And we are entering or have entered a debt spiral. In my opinion, we've entered it. There are some that still are saying we're entering, but we're there. Collapse, reset, right? We're there. Um, there are folks trying to figure this out. So you hear these different proposals like stablecoin, like gold, um, like you hear these different concepts that are coming out. Um, these are attempts to lessen that blow. We'll see how they work. What we also have is this digital dollar movement, right? So we have CBDCs. These are controlled, trackable currencies, right? And this is an attempt to like modernize money. So thinking about how we take it off of like the paper monetary system and put it into a digital monetary system, modernizing it. And then ideally for the US, this would be a way to potentially retain global power. I don't think that that's going to work, but this is a thing that the Fed is throwing out there. Then what you also are seeing right now is this like these asset-backed uh, efforts. And so what that means is that central banks and countries are beginning to hoard gold. This is kind of signaling that there's a preparation for them to have a more secure currency model, right? So again, we had a gold standard. There's been some shifts in what that looks like, but ultimately what you had was the US dollar pegged to gold, right? And then other currencies kind of pegged to the US dollar. When we did away with the gold standard, all of that went away, and now there's nothing that's really, this is why we can just keep printing money. One of the reasons why we can keep printing money. So, what some of these countries are doing, and the U.S. is also working on this, but what some of these countries are doing is buying up massive amounts of gold. So the banks are doing that. There are countries that are doing that, and this is to potentially look at how we can get back to an asset-based type of monetary system. Don't think that's going to work fully either, but these are some of the things that folks are doing. Then you also have what's happening with the de-dollarization. And I think for me, that's one of the most scary things for us that have, as a community, that tend to have less assets. But what that means is that other countries are beginning to reduce their reliance on the US dollar. And so that means that the US dollar is going to lose its dominant position. And as we, as I think about and as I continue to promote concepts about going global and, really doing business with our cousins across the water and kind of what that looks like, when the US dollar begins to lose its power, that not only affects what happens here on the ground, but it also affects how we are able to operate with our cousins from across the way. So we should just know, though, that this de-dollarization process is happening. The dollar is being intentionally weakened, and through alliances like the BRICS nations, they have found ways to maneuver around the U.S. dollar. So they're continuing to do that. And so the US is growing very slowly. Matter of fact, if I had to say it, the US is shrinking. It's not growing at all. That might not be 100% of the numbers, but that's like basically what it is. I mean, at this point, the last GDP report was laughable. So, excuse me. So they came out and said that the US was growing, and it's not growing. It just isn't. They're throwing in AI, and AI is a bubble, and we could talk about that another day too. But they're lying to us, and it frustrates me. So the US is not growing. The US is slowing down, if not contracting. And of course, as I mentioned already, the deficits are rising. Investors are shifting. So that's kind of like what's going on right now. Again, like there could be other things that happen to make this harder faster. Um, we have a completely incompetent government, so there's that. But by and large, at least economists are looking at this problem and trying to figure out how to soften the inevitable blow that's coming. So, all right, so what does this mean for like us everyday people? First of all, our savings could lose value. Our savings will lose value. That's what's going to happen. And that's also going to mean that our purchasing power is going to decline. So that's important, right? And the best way to put that is you go to the store today, $100 might get you 20 items at the grocery store. As the dollar continues to lose value, that $100 might get you 15 items at the grocery store. That $100 might then get you 10 items at the grocery store, right? So to get you the same 20 items, now you need $200. And so this is where we start to run into a problem where the everyday person is so squeezed that that we don't really know what to do, right? And so we start um, defaulting and all these things. So we're already seeing that, and that's why I again say we are already in a collapse, right? So like bankruptcies are at all-time high, foreclosures are up. I mean, these things are already happening, and the dollar has some ways to go before it hits wherever it's going to hit. Based off some economists, they think it could still drop like another 40, 50, 60%, right? So like we're not quite there, and folks are already hurting bad. So we need to really be thinking about this. And this is why I said we're already behind the curveball. We got to start moving. Those gaps are going to continue to widen. Communities that have the least amount of liquidity and the least amount of access to the information of how things are changing are going to be hit really hard. We got our work cut out for us, y'all. We got our work cut out for us. And so I want to just kind of shift here into businesses, right? So um, I'm the founder of a community foundation that supports Black entrepreneurship. I'm the founder of a capacity building technical assistance organization that supports Black entrepreneurship. I'm the founder of the Economic Development Association for Black communities. I have been here working on behalf of the Black community to help us move our businesses forward as a tool for building wealth. So I am very interested in and very vested in how these changes and effects are going to affect small businesses, and how we as community leaders, which is what I believe small businesses are, how does this affect our ability to not only lead our families and provide for our families, but also provide and lead within the community. So I'm going to talk about 6 things that we need to be thinking about as small businesses. Okay. You want to stick around for all 6 of them. If you've made it this far, kudos to you. All right. So one is cash flow stability, right? So this is what you need to be doing. Okay. Take notes. One, you need to audit your finances. So this means that you need to go through your business expenses and eliminate everything that's not absolutely essential. Okay? Start knocking things out. Now, I'm saying this and I don't mean to be like facetious about it, because I just want to acknowledge like the things that we should be doing are not easy, but we still got to do them. But they're not easy, but we still got to do them. You need to be working as hard as possible right now to build in buffer room. 3 to 6 months. I'm going to lean to the 6 months. If you can build in more, do that. What it like, get lean on your budget. And then with that lean budget, what do you need to put aside in order to survive for a couple of months if your sales takes a hit? Okay. And also, not just if your sales takes a hit, remember the value of your dollar is going to take a hit. So you need to be able to think through that. You want to look at like reevaluating your vendors. You want to look at renegotiating your contracts, right? So you want to get lean and you want to start stacking. So this is really what it looks like to think about your cash flow. Okay. The next thing you want to do is you want to work on securing some liquidity. This is a ridiculous cycle for Black businesses because, of course, securing access to capital is a thing that we've been talking about now for forever, right? So again, I'm not saying that this is easy, but we got to figure out how to do it. And so you need to try to get a line of credit, right, before you need it. So you could already need it, but you need to try and get it. So a line of credit, right? You need to try and get that. Part of that is going to be looking at how you improve your banking relationships, and I think that's important. I feel like we saw a lot of this during like the PPP era when like Black folks went into banks and they didn't even have a banker or a relationship. So hopefully some of y'all already got hip on that and have already started to form relationships with your banks. But like if you haven't, you need to walk in there and act like you belong there, okay? Because you do, and start to improve your banking relationships right away. Then you got to get prepared on your financials. And I talked about this just briefly on my Instagram, but like, listen, you can't be in my DMs asking me about how you're going to work with somebody overseas and you don't even have your compliance together in the US. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. You got to start getting your finances together. It's not easy, but it's also honestly not that hard. It's like it takes some dedication and it's the unsexy part of business, but you got to do it. So banks are going to tighten up their lending. This is what they do in downturns, and they already wasn't lending to you anyway. So understand that your financials being tight is not only important for you working to secure some access to capital, but it's also important in you being able to look at your finances and make the best financial decisions for your business. So we got to get to that unsexy part. The next thing is you want to strengthen your revenues. Okay, this is really important. We have weak sales. We have weak sales pipelines, right? And that equals vulnerability in your business, period. So when you have a downturn and people are thinking about the most essential things, right? You have to ask yourself how are you operating in that sales cycle? So your revenue is going to be the difference between you having reserves. Your revenue is going to be the difference between you being able to access capital. Your revenues are going to be the difference between you being able to scale, between you being able to hire, or you closing your doors. So you have to get your sales together. I cannot stress this enough. You have to build multiple revenues, right? Like you can't just have one thing that you're selling. And this doesn't mean to like try to, there's this whole time frame when people are like, I'm about to create 7 streams of income. Like you need to create ways, multiple ways for your businesses to um, uh, grow your revenue, right? Like you need revenue generating strategies that tie in or are applicable to the business that you have. So the next thing I want you to think about is your partners and your acquisitions. Okay, we are, despite everything else that's going on, still, we are in this silver tsunami wave. If you're not familiar with the term silver tsunami, Google is your friend. Look it up. We could talk about it later. But a silver tsunami is the fact that you have all these boomers that are selling off their businesses. There are businesses for sale galore. Okay, it doesn't mean that you could just buy any old thing. You need to buy something that has a good book of business, that has a track record, and that has a pathway to the way that markets are shifting these days. So, but we need to be thinking about acquisition as a growth strategy for our business. You can buy streams of income, you can buy your way into bigger businesses, okay, and more revenue. So, we need to be thinking about acquisitions as a growth strategy and partnerships and the right partnerships that are going to help you move your business forward, okay? Um, These economic downturns can create opportunity, but a lot of times we're going to have to work together. I know I'm working on different partnership aspects right now so that other folks that are like me that are ready to pool their money together can make strategic acquisitions and purchases in order for us to have the assets that we are going to need to sustain what this looks like. So, but we got to work together to do that. I'm just looking at my notes, y'all. So yeah, uh, you want to form some collaborations. You want to share your resources, and while things are starting to drop, those are good times to start getting in and trying to buy some of these assets at lower valuations, especially if you see like a distressed asset or if you see something that the price is dropping. Right, you can get in there. We can't think that everything that has a low price tag automatically means that it ain't shit. That's not necessarily the case. People are trying to get out of stuff. You don't know people's total financial picture. So they could have something distressed or they could have something that they're willing to get rid of at a lower price so they can get rid of it faster. There's all types of reasons why somebody might sell something at below the value of it, and values are going to be very flexible right now. But if you see something that makes sense for you to add to your business strategy, consider how you're going to get a hold of that. And that might mean pulling your resources together. That might mean you have to remember that owning a portion of something is better than owning all of nothing, right? So there's that. Then you want to strengthen your systems and your leadership. And I really just can't stress this enough. If your business is going to last, you have to have improved operations. You have to automate some things. You're going to have to create some SOPs. You're going to have to make sure that the back end of your business is tight. So work on it. It's things that I'm working on right now on the back end of my businesses in order to make sure that we tighten up, because that's what we got to do. We got to tighten up. So you ain't out there alone. I'm walking through it too. And I'm going to keep telling you about the things that I'm working on and doing myself. But really think about like when someone is stretched thin and they got to spend some money, how can you be at the top of their mind when they're ready to spend that type of money? So enhance your customer experience and really be thinking about how you show up in the marketplace, right? Strong leadership within your business is going to outperform panic, right? So you have to be knowledgeable. You have to know that your shit is tight on the back end in order for you to show up and really be a calming effect when there can be a lot of chaos around you. You got to be able to do that and be that for your business in these types of times. So the last one, and in my opinion, this is the most important one, and this is the shift in the market, right? So you have to ask yourself, where is demand moving? Even when everything is dropping, there is still a market. There is still business happening. There's still business moving. Where is that business going? There is an aging population. That is a big issue, right? The aging population. But can your product or can your service support the aging population, right? Think about efficiency with your tools, think about affordability, think about automation, think about security, think about essential services, right? So start to think like, where is the demand moving and how can I support that? And then tailor your product and service accordingly. All right. So these are some of the things that small businesses need to be looking at. I hope that you found this valuable, y'all. Like we are not about to be sitting around just waiting for a collapse, right? We have to navigate a transition. And so the businesses that manage to stay informed, that are able to stay liquid, that are able to think strategically, like they're going to grow through this time, and others are simply going to contract or close their doors. So if you want to keep getting breakdowns like this, go ahead and like, subscribe, share this with another business owner. Let me know in the comments like what you felt like was good or what part of the reset do you want me to go deeper into? Yeah. And then until until next time, y'all. I hope you found this helpful and I'm looking forward to being in this with y'all. We are in it together.